Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, No Code Workflows That Grew a $10 Million Company. We know you guys have a lot of things you could be doing with your Friday, so really appreciate that you are spending it here with us. Also, love to see all the people joining us from all over the world. It's so great. My name is Katie, and I'm going to be moderating today's event. And before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this webinar will be recorded, and you'll get an email with the recording on Monday. Next, all attendees are muted, but if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you put the questions in the chat box, it'll probably get lost just due to the sheer number of people on the call. So be sure to type it in the Q&A box, and we'll have Lori on the line from our support team try her best to get those to you during the webinar. And if not, we'll have time at the end of the webinar for Michael to answer some of your questions live. There will also be a survey at the end of the webinar, and we'd love it if you could fill it out and give us any feedback that you might have so we can improve all of our future events. All right, let's get started. I would love to introduce our speaker today, Michael Mortocci. He is the founder and chief swag officer at SwagUp, kicking off his entrepreneurial journey at the age of 5. Michael has been running businesses for as long as he can remember. Never afraid to make a bold move, Michael dropped out of William & Mary after 2.5 years to become business partners in an online fitness business with NFL veteran Steve Weatherford before starting SwagUp, the API-first platform that helps growing companies easily create, automate, and distribute swag globally. In just 3 years, SwagUp has grown to over 1,200 customers, 65 employees, and 8 figures in sales with 0 venture funding, which I think is pretty awesome. So first I'm going to introduce you to the 3 companies we'll be talking about today, and then we'll turn it over to Michael to walk you through how he actually built out SwagUp's workflows. All right, so the first one, what is SwagUp? So SwagUp is a platform that allows high growth companies to create, automate, and distribute high-quality branded swag items globally through one streamlined integrated vendor. Michael actually founded SwagUp after realizing there was a major need in the market for high-quality swag items to be delivered in an efficient and cost-effective way. And he's going to be talking a little bit more about the company later. Next, we have Zapier. So Zapier actually rhymes with happier, which is a fun fact that a lot of people don't know. Zapier is a tool that allows you to connect your favorite web apps to each other to move information between them automatically. It actually allows you to get rid of the busy work in your day-to-day and focus on the work that really matters. So for example, you can connect popular apps like MailChimp, Gmail, Slack, Salesforce, and actually over 2,000 more apps to each other while using Zapier. Again, Michael will talk about using Zapier to streamline his workflow in a bit. And lastly, we have Typeform, which is absolutely one of my favorite tools. And you'll all get a chance to see it at the end when you take our survey after the webinar. But with Typeform, every interaction counts. They help companies of any size turn online forms, surveys, and quizzes into conversational experiences that are fun, interactive, and more personalized. They are essentially humanizing the internet, and you'll see a bit more about how SwagUp uses Typeform in a second. All right, so remember you can ask all the questions that you want in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, the Q&A, not the chat, and we'll either answer them at the end of the webinar, and we'll try our best to have Lori answer those in real time. All right, and with that, I'll let Michael take it away.
Perfect. First off, thanks, Katie, and thank you everyone at Zapier and Typeform. It's funny because all of our customers would always say Zapier. I had no idea how to say it for the longest time. I was so confused. But no, it's been awesome working with you guys, especially working with Typeform for probably about 2 years now, and integrating you guys into the different workflows. So really excited to just have some time to walk through, what we did to get off the ground, basically. I say this to a lot of people, but we couldn't have done what we've done without tools like Typeform and Trello and Zapier and Wix, and because I don't have that technological background and development background, and it's hard to find those types of people early on when you don't have the money to do it, and you don't have really a business plan in place yet. So again, I just want to thank both of those tools and and everyone that's part of those teams for for everything that they've done to help us up to this point. So like I said, we're going to go through a few different workflows. We'll go through the story of kind of how we got to this point and talk about some different workflows that we created using these tools to get there, and just calling them out along the way. As mentioned earlier, SwagUp is basically a platform that takes this really messy process that is, buying and distributing swag, at a corporate level, and makes it really simple through one platform. So if you think about, companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon and pretty much any high growth company, they have so many different needs for swag, and they're managing it all kind of like in silos where every team kind of does it a little bit differently. They have different vendors for it. It's hard to stay consistent from a brand perspective, economies of scale of lumping orders together with different teams. So, and also global fulfillment is just very difficult. So we've developed this platform that the entire company basically can get on and place their orders and manage inventory and distribute globally. So, but it wasn't always really like that. I mean, what we are now is so different than where we started. Really, originally started this company out of my mom's house. Literally, it's that kind of standard startup story where you start a company out of your garage. It's literally a garage that was turned into an office out of my mom's house, and I was working, like Katie had mentioned, went to William and Mary. After that, dropped out about 2.5 years in and joined, NFL player Steve Weatherford on a fitness training business. And then after that, after a year of working on that, it went really well. Decided to leave and join a VC firm that my buddy had been running in New York City around hospitality and kind of travel management startups. And just kind of that being there and being around all these startups again, I realized how important swag was to them. There's so many, like I said, swag and culture and brand have become the new ways for companies to go to market. And you're building defensibility by building this culture around your company, and swag plays a really big part in it. But there just wasn't really any interesting companies out there doing it. You have companies like Moo and Sticker Mule who have done a really good job of crafting a brand around printed merchandise. But swag is really the much bigger opportunity because you're not stuck with just business cards and just stickers. It's everything. It's branded hats and water bottles and backpacks and these packages that you send out. But there's no real brand for it. You have these four imprints and custom inks that are these big e-commerce platforms, but they have no real services and they don't really understand how startups work. And then on the other side, you have like these agencies that are, like Red Antler style or branding and marketing agencies that, they're great and the output's great, but it takes a really long time to get anything done. It's really expensive. So we kind of want to be somewhere in between, kind of like take the branding and positioning of a direct-to-consumer company, but with the product-focused ease of use and scalability of like a SaaS company, and kind of bring that together and take it to the world of swag and layer in this like really great brand on top of it. So at night, basically, when I was at the VC firm, I was there for about 4 months, and at night, I would just start to think about it and figure out, where are we going to get started? I knew what people had wanted. I had a good sense of what startups were going to want, but I didn't really have the tools or the know-how to get it into action or to build a full-fledged product. But something that I think is really important, and it kind of ties this entire narrative together, is just this idea of resourcefulness. And there's just so many tools and so much information now at our fingertips that it really doesn't take a whole lot to take the first step in launching a business. There's just so much out there, and it's really kind of stripped away the excuses to a degree. I think 40, 50, 60 years ago, starting a business was a huge, task. First off, required a lot of money, required a lot of know-how, distribution was very difficult. But now you have things like, tools like Wix, Typeform, Trello, Zapier, lots of others, QuickBooks, you have things like Google Analytics. Like there's just so many ways that you can get started and get initial feedback. And these tools are really Wix, Typeform, Trello, Zapier were really the fundamental kind of infrastructure that helped us start and allowed us to get off the ground without much, resources. So we just wanted to create something, initially that was super simple. It was visual and interactive and showcased to startups a curated list of swag items. So stuff that people would actually want to use, stuff that was high quality, and wrap it up into an experience that was just a lot more simple than what has been out there before. Katie and I in the group were talking about, their own experience buying swag, and it was very much, these websites that have 30, 40, 50,000 items on there and you have no idea what to do, or, the only way to get started with them is you have to call them. And I know myself from a consumer standpoint, I don't want to deal with that. I wanted to have something that resonated with the workflows and how startups work. So this was kind of like the initial, idea of what we had built. And, you can even see the little banner that says create a free Wix site. I think we were too cheap to even pay for the more premium plan where they can take that away. And, like I said, we wanted to create something that was really visual and interactive. And, Typeform is really the only way that we can do that. You can't just put in, a Google form or something like that and just get requests and little, check boxes marked or something. It's just wasn't the same kind of idea. So, we combined putting this basic website together on Wix and Typeform and got some simple Google and Facebook ads running. And again, these are really simple things that you can learn, easily. Google ads and Facebook ads. There's, free videos on YouTube, all that kind of stuff. I learned a lot about it working with the NFL player, and just kind of teaching myself. But so we got these initial ads up and literally within days started to get some inbound interest. One of the first big ones that I remember was Soylent. And if you know Soylent, they're like that meal replacement shake that everyone kind of makes fun of Silicon Valley people for drinking, because it's just so typical. It's like, I don't know, it's just funny. But they reached out and they wanted to do stickers with like their bottle on them and some other things. So that was, once we saw companies of like that stature starting to reach out, literally within days while I was still working at the VC firm, it started to give me the confidence that, maybe there's something here. And then about a week or two later, we got an inbound inquiry from a company called Uncharted Play. I think now they're called Uncharted Power out in Harlem. And it's a really cool startup that takes kinetic energy and helps, create energy for third world country, little villages and stuff like that. And they had this idea that they wanted to put together 100 different swag packs. And at the time, I don't really know if we knew what that meant or called them swag packs, but they wanted to put together like bundles of items for all of their new hires. So it was going to be this tote bag and it was filled with a sweatshirt and a bottle and a notebook and some pens and stickers, and everybody was going to get it. And it was 100 of these and they were $100 each. So it was a $10,000 order. And, up to that point, when I started the company, I was 22 years old. I think I just turned 22 in May of 2017. I had never seen $10,000, at least I wasn't directly responsible for generating any sort of $10,000 orders. And it just seemed really crazy that anybody would even give us that amount of money, kind of being in my mom's house and not really having a legitimate business. And we don't have any credibility. We haven't really worked with anybody. If you look on our initial site, a lot of the logos were people I knew that, helped me just do a few orders in the beginning. Like we didn't really have much to go off of. And we saw like, okay, if they want to put these packs together, there's so many different use cases for these, whether it's new hires, partners, customers, subscriptions. People really love this unboxing experience, kind of like getting a Birchbox or a BarkBox or something. But the process of putting that together was so logistically intense that I knew that if we can streamline that process, we can make, we can build a really big business, because like I said, there's so many ways that people can use this, but they don't want to, because it's too much work. If you try to do this yourself, you have to deal with 10 different vendors. You have to have space in an office to assemble packages. You have to know how to handle global logistics. There's just a lot of pieces. So I knew if we can create an experience to allow people to build out these packages really simply, that we'd be able to get into the door with a ton of really great companies, because I knew that other swag, providers just didn't want to deal with the headache of this. But with that in mind, we needed to change up the site a bit, because it didn't start off where we had this pack builder. It started off where it was more of an inquiry form. But once we made that conscious decision to switch solely as like a swag pack company and make that our positioning, we needed to build out, a more intuitive kind of user experience to do that. So, that's where we got into the original pack builder. So this was our core kind of product that helped us generate over $5 million in revenue, literally within the first, I'd say 18 months, where this was the core kind of way and funnel into our website. And we thought it'd be cool to kind of outline these workflows in ways that are really visual so that you can see them and really visualize how we did it versus just seeing some screenshots. And you can see the different kind of, apps that we used and where Zapier played a role. And we even highlighted, if you look in the bottom left, the actual statistics straight from Typeform. So you can see how many people were on it, how many responses, all that kind of stuff. So basically the way that the pack builder worked was, like I said, we started off with a Wix site. And the reason I really like Wix, and it's not on here, and it's kind of almost to a degree, I feel like they have a stigma. Like if you tell somebody like, oh, I built my site on Wix, I feel like people kind of look down on you. But now Webflow all of a sudden is like this big thing and everyone thinks Webflow is cool, but Wix was never cool. So I don't really get it, but Wix is really great because they allow you to start with a blank white slate if you really want. And I tried other things like Squarespace and other website builders, but I didn't like them because they're very templatized. Whereas Wix, you can literally just start with a white page and just design it however you want. So that's why we decided to do that. And Typeform and Wix have a good partnership, but you can also just insert them through iframes. And iframes allow you to basically like skin a Typeform and throw it on a site to make it look natural. And I think that was one of the best parts about Typeform is that they don't try to like get in the way and like take over the show. They allow you to embed it within your own experiences and make them feel really natural. And that's why it worked so well, because it really felt like it was part of the site. So we had the site on Wix. We built out this Typeform, and as you can see there, we made it really visual. We made, we had about 10 to 12 options per category, and companies would go through that and be like, okay, do I want to add a water bottle to this box? Yes or no? And then you'd see all the water bottle options. So we use like conditional logic from Typeform, and you just keep going through section by section. Do you want to add a t-shirt to your pack? Yes or no? And you'd see the different options. There were some limitations to it, but for the most part, it worked really, really well. And what we did is we just connected those via Zapier to Trello and Slack. First off, I'm a really big proponent of using Slack as like a notifications channel. I think it's a great way to keep the team engaged, have a lot of transparency, and it's great for morale. So constantly we're seeing in our Slack channel every time the leads are coming in, how much those leads are for. And when you get today we had a couple interesting ones for like 120,000, 80,000. It's really exciting to see that happening on a live basis. It's not like a huge workflow thing, but it's just nice for the team to be able to see stuff like that. And then Trello is where we kind of treated Trello like a mini ERP system. It was like our order management system, and it's really powerful. The only issue with Trello is that, we saw this, is that once you get really big with it and you have a lot of files on it, it starts to get a little slow. So that's what happened. We started to like duplicate our Trello boards a lot so that they got quicker again. But it was really helpful because we started to layer in third-party designers over time. We have a design team out in Latin America that handles all the mock-ups, and we needed a way to communicate to them basically how these orders were going to go and the projects they need to work on, get the files, all that kind of stuff. So Trello was a great way, to just be able to show all the responses from Typeform straight in there so that, that can get communicated to the design team. They can work on it right away. And what that allowed, initially I was doing the designs and then a buddy of mine was doing them. What this allowed is no matter if it came in at 10 a.m., 2 a.m., 5 p.m., they were just going to the team and we might be sleeping and they can start working on it. And it was really valuable. And it allowed us to have kind of like a mini CRM as well, where we can see kind of the stages of the deals of where they're at. And then we use Zapier again for once those deals got to certain stages where it would automatically send out an email with a proposal. So we'd grab the files, we'd send them over to the client for a proposal. We'd have the message kind of pre-formatted, and just allowed us to save a ton of time because again, bootstrap company, started out of my house. I had maybe $25,000 in my bank account, which I almost blew all of it on a WeWork office for no reason because I'm an idiot. We didn't have much resource to go off of. So anytime you can kind of get more out of the few people you have there and you can leverage their time, it's super important. So like I said, this was the bedrock foundation of, how we got off the ground. And we did it, literally built this in one night. Obviously it evolved over time, but it was huge and it generated the first $5 million for us. But then after that, what we realized was that a big piece of what we do is physical. We get a lot of business, and we've grown a ton by, people getting to experience the packages in real life, and then they see it and they tell other people where they got it and they share it on social media. So that we knew if we can get sample packs in people's hands really quickly and effectively, that they'd be so much more likely to buy, because it's not just like this idea that they see in a PDF on a computer. It's actually something physical. They can bring it into a meeting with their boss. And the reason why, the real story, a lot of times you do the right thing after doing the wrong thing and learning the lesson the hard way. But we had this really big deal that we were working on with Jefferies, which is a big bank in New York City. And I think it was a $600,000 deal. And at that time, we had never even come close to something like that. And it was just, they were a prospect. It wasn't like we closed them or anything. And they loved, everything we put together, the proposal, the presentation, the mock-ups looked great. And then at the last minute, I was following up with them because I didn't hear. And then she tells us, oh, well, our CEO loved everything you guys did, but they decided to go with another vendor because they sent us a sample. Yes. And it was like, even though they didn't like the items as much and they didn't like working with them as much as us, people are very like risk averse and they want to see something physical. So from that point on, we decided we were going to make sample packs a huge piece of the business and part of, the whole inbound kind of process when leads are coming in. And these sample packs help generate about over 25% of our revenue you can attribute back to sample packs. And the process it's relatively similar to the process we built out with the pack form, but so we had the Wix site, obviously, and a landing page specifically for these samples. And we built a lot of like ad campaigns that went straight to it as well, especially on some other social platforms. And, the type form was pretty simple, just a way to gather their information and a few qualifying questions in terms of like, what position are you in? How many packs might you need a year? Like, when are you looking to get started? That kind of stuff. And then also if it was US or international, we had this conditional logic to throw in Stripe. Because, for the longest time, we were just doing free samples, no matter where it is, over 92, done. But international ones can get a little expensive. So we decided it's worth to just charge $25 for international. So the Stripe integration with Typeform is really helpful because we can just easily just charge right there. We didn't have to go back and have our team reach out and be like, oh, by the way, this is $25. And it's also not a good experience to do that. So from there, we connected those responses into Zapier. And it was a relatively complex Zap because it goes into a few different places. But the first place it goes into is Slack, again, because like I said, it's great for just transparency and visibility to be able to see all those leads coming in. It's also good if it's like a big company, then you can know, like, I got to reach out to these people right away. And then the other place it went into is Salesforce. Salesforce basically generates the lead and generates all the information in terms of where we have to fulfill it. And that was sent through to our SwagUp app, basically. So since starting, we've built out a SwagUp Zapier app, and that allows us to automatically send packages out every time, a new fulfillment request comes in. So the same way that a sample pack comes in and gets fulfilled automatically is the same way that a client's pack that comes in gets fulfilled automatically. So sample packs were really huge for us getting off the ground, and it's helped us kind of build this mini brand around SwagUp because there's so many people that have our products out in the world now. And then over time, the next one we want to talk about is redeem pages. So over time, we didn't go out and set out and know exactly what people wanted. We didn't know that we were going to build this swag management platform. We didn't know we'd need an API. We didn't know how we would use our Zapier app. And we just kind of uncovered these things over time. And one of the things that we've uncovered over time was the idea of these redeem pages. So basically, if you think about it, clients, we want to take out all the friction in the process. So we want to give them no reason to say no to us. We want to give them, no reason why this is going to be too hard for them to execute. So we want to provide them the tools. And one of the tools is the idea of a redeem page, which is basically a web page that allows our clients to collect responses for things. So if it's new hires or interns or customers, they can send this link out automatically to them. It could be unique URLs. It could be, regular URLs. And they can go in and fill out the information through our type form that we built out here using conditional logic based on if it's US or international. And we basically shoot that through Zapier using the SwagUp app again into our CRM, our ERP, which is Salesforce, and then automatically fulfill those packages. So, like Comcast is one of our clients, for example. They use these redeem pages for all of their new hires. So it goes out in one of the onboarding emails. They go into the page, they fill out their information. We're automatically fulfilling packs. So in the past, we used to have like all these Google spreadsheets and we were managing these requests. We'd have to have like a logistics manager go back in there and check all the ones he shipped, send them out, keep track of the cost if they didn't prepay. It was just such a nightmare. And when we figured out this workflow, and obviously it doesn't necessarily work for all businesses, but just get you thinking about different ways that you can do stuff. Once we figured out this workflow and we just started to have packages shipping out automatically, it was a huge help. And now more than ever with coronavirus going on, we're shipping out thousands of packages a month, 5, 10, 15,000 packages or more. And there's no way we would have been able to manage this process manually without automatically integrating it through our Zapier app and into our ERP. And then a cool thing that we've layered on with a few different companies is adding in like a feedback survey at the end. So, the pack goes out and we put this delay step within Zapier that's like, okay, after 7 days of the package going out, we want to send a feedback survey to the person that got it so that we can figure out, what were the items that they really liked? What was their response to it? Did they really enjoy it? And that gives, we've seen the feedback and it's really strong. And that gives our clients a sense of them making the right decision, and it's something that they can go back to management with and be like, hey, this has been the impact of swag packs on new hires at NASDAQ. This is really exciting. And it just keeps people bought in and really interested. So that was another really, important thing. And we've now kind of, since starting, 18 months in, we brought in our CTO. Now we have about 35 software engineers. So now, some of these workflows continue to progress and we'll go into like how many we still have, but we've also used these as like testing grounds for product development. So now we're building out our own interface for redeem pages, and we'll still use, the Zapier app and stuff like that. But, we've done it in a way where we've learned from these experiences and continue to build on them. And then inevitably, with all the growth that we've had, these workflows have made us really efficient, but at a certain point you need more people. 18 months in, I think we still had 15 people. Now we're 19 months since then, we have 65. So we've had 50 people over the last year and a half join the team. And it's really difficult to manage that, in terms of keeping track of candidates. And there's lots of systems out there for stuff like this. There's Lever, there's Bamboo HR. There's lots of different ATSs and applicant tracking systems, but they're expensive. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of cheap when it comes to buying software. Like I just feel like spending 5 to 10 grand for something like Lever that is basically a glorified Trello board just doesn't make that much sense, So we always try to get creative. So we built out this careers page in Webflow that really mimics our site. It looks basically exactly like our site. And they just link to a Typeform application, and it's one application for all positions. And there's some conditional logic in there based on the position that they're going after in terms of like which questions we then ask them. And we use Zapier then to connect those to both Slack and Trello. And again, I like Slack notifications because it gets the conversation started. If we see cool applicants come in, we start commenting back and forth. Leadership in the team is on there. And then Trello, like I said, is really, we just looked at like other applicant tracking systems and kind of mimic the different stages that are in it. So, first reach out, scheduled first call, second call, not a fit, or sent out a proposal, whatever it is, all different stages, we can keep track of it in there. And we have the main kind of people involved in hiring on there to leave comments and everything like that. And then based on the different lists that the cards went into, we could trigger different actions. So for example, if the list was called, reached out, initial reach out, that would just pre-populate a message that had a Calendly link to automatically book time with these people to join the team. To schedule the first call. Alternatively, at the end, if it wasn't a fit, that trigger a different email. So it's just these little things. It's like, how do I save 5% here, 5% here, 5% here? And in aggregate, it starts to really, help. And then lastly, one of the cool integrations that we did with Zapier was that once we decided we were going to hire them, we put them into a final list that was like offer sent out, or I can't remember the exact naming for it. And what that does is it automatically fills in the relevant information into a DocuSign and sends the offer letter out to them. We use this for a couple other things internally, like processing partnership agreements and some other, some service level agreements for clients. So we use Zapier to connect through DocuSign that way. But again, just trying to find, because the back end of our business, I think one of the things that allows startups kind of, neglect, and I'd say I do it too, is like you don't put a lot of resources in the back end, like finance and accounting and HR and that types of stuff. We have Artem on our team, who's a partner of ours, and I feel bad for him because we just give him so much stuff to do. But it's like one of those things. It's like if it doesn't generate revenue, it's like hard to allocate to. But you have to then find ways to make that process easier for those people. And this is one way that we've done it. And then lastly, the last workflow I'll go through is honestly the simplest one in here. But it's still fun. Look, it's so basic, but it's just the idea that when invoices are generated in Salesforce, which then generates invoices in QuickBooks, they go into our Slack channel. And I would say this is my favorite Slack channel and the favorite integration that we have, because it just shows all the times that invoices and deals are being closed in Salesforce. And the team just has so much fun. Like we're very transparent, where every single person in the company sees every single deal that closes for, no matter what the amount is, whatever it is, everybody can see it. And I love to like everybody getting and rallying around, like all the deals that are happening. When one of the salespeople closes one, you congratulate them, all that kind of stuff. We like to bust each other's chops. So I think sometimes too, it's not just about how robust and crazy the workflows are. It's like how effective they are and what they do to the culture and morale. So, there's so many other ones that we've built out. SwagUp today, we have 164 different active type forms running right now. And every day we add more. We have over 50 active Zaps. And if you include the ones that our clients are using from our own Zapier app, it's much more than that. Like I said, our Zaps power sending out thousands of packages a month. For example, we have Bread Finance as a client of ours. They use our Zapier app to connect into Salesforce. So every time they have like closed won deals, they're automatically sending out packages. And then we're even seeing large enterprises elect to use our Zapier app and do it that way versus like building out these full-on integrations or like building out apps for Workday or for Paycor. They're like, oh, well, if we can just do it through webhooks with Zapier, this is so much easier. They can get it set up in an hour or two versus having to bog down their team to set up integrations. So it's not just an internal way to save time. It's also a way to help your clients save time and integrate into your system. So I think getting started using other Zaps and Zapier apps out there is super valuable, but then getting to the point where you can have your own and let it power your business, I think is really huge. And like I said, now we're at 65 employees, and I think we'll probably get to over 100 within the next 12 months. We've been hiring throughout this entire situation. I think in the last month, we probably hired 4 or 5 people and have plans to do the same for this next month. And it's not to say like you don't want to get hung up or proud about how many people you have, because at the end of the day, you want to be efficient and you want to get as much done with as little people as possible. But there's certain businesses that are very difficult to kind of, do that with. And ours is very operationally intense. We have our own warehouse. We control kind of a lot of the supply chain to a degree. So that's why I have so many people. This year we'll do over 12 million in sales. I think it'll probably even be higher than that given kind of what we've been seeing lately. And as Katie said, we have over 1,300 customers. So, and they range anywhere from high growth Series B and C startups all the way up to the biggest companies in the world like Walmart and NASDAQ. We've done all of this without raising any money. And I think the last thing I'll bring up before Katie jumps in is that, I think it's really important to look at like where we're at now and how these tools and bootstrapping, what the impact of that was. I would say, conservatively that the company is probably worth maybe 25 million. I think more, but let's say it's worth $25 million today. Every 1% is worth $250,000. So if you're, the general kind of seed round that you're going to raise for investors, they're going to want like 20% of your company, which today is worth about $5 million. And, the easy thing is just to be like, hey, I'm going to start this company. I'm going to raise 300,000. I'm going to raise 500,000. But like, think about what that means down the line. If you can even shave off 5% of that or 10% of that and not be so reliant on that outside capital, think about how much of that equity you can keep. And as long as you're like creative with it, you can keep it. And then you can use that to incentivize new hires and, actually put it to work when you need it versus in the stages where you're still kind of like ideating, where I don't think it's worth kind of deploying money on it just yet. So that's all I got. I'll send it over to Katie now. Hopefully that was helpful, but we'll go through a few more questions as well.
Yeah, wow. It's pretty amazing to hear everything you've done. That's pretty cool. Um, so I guess I have a few questions for you just as we kind of wrap up and then go into Q&A, but can you give us maybe your greatest piece of advice as for all of us as we're kind of growing our own companies?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the greatest one. It's always hard to like pick like what is the number one thing, but
Yeah.
something I think that's really important is just really staying focused solely, on what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve and on your customers, and make solving your customers' problem your ultimate mission. I think so many people get focused on, you know, what is the competition doing, what, hype and PR and companies that are raising a ton of money. But it's, none of that is really necessarily indicative of future success. I mean, if anything, we've seen over the last 6 months that a lot of the companies that have raised the most money are actually the ones in the worst positions. And I think it's really you personally, you're in that business day in and day out. How strong or weak the business is, and what you're capable of. And I think, more people would benefit by kind of keeping their heads down and just focusing on their customers as much as possible, and kind of letting the noise outside kind of be. And it's kind of ironic because we're on this, webinar now with thousands of people that are going to see it and kind of PR to a degree. But for the first 3 years, really, we didn't go out and do anything. I was just telling you how we didn't really even post on Twitter or Instagram, for the longest time. So I think just focus on your customers as much as possible early on.
Yeah, I love it. Stay in your own lane kind of thing. Okay, cool. So what's a not so great lesson that you've learned?
I mean, I feel like every day you learn about 5 new things that you shouldn't be doing. And they constantly evolve, and you probably make the same mistakes over and over again. But, one of the recurring themes is that I think it's very difficult to hire your friends. When you're bootstrapping and you don't have a lot of money, I think it's really natural to go look into your network and be like, hey, do you want to join this thing that I started? Like, I like you, I trust you, like, come join. And to a degree, that's helpful because you don't have to worry about the trust factor. At least you don't think you have to. It's easy to find them. They're willing to sacrifice a little for you. They might not need to make like $200,000 right away. But it comes with a lot of downsides as well. It becomes very difficult to think rationally when you're dealing with your friends. You treat them differently than you treat other people. When it comes down to make hard decisions, you end up not making them, or you end up neglecting them, or they end up ruining a friendship. So I think before you start bringing on friends, I think you have to really think about like, hey, there's a 50-50 shot this doesn't work out. And no matter what you say up front, it's always going to be a hard thing to kind of go through to have to let go of friends. Or, we even had a situation where a friend of mine that was part of this, ended up, the relationship really started to deteriorate to a degree where, by the end of it, he started stealing from the company. It was a tough situation, and they're really hard kind of situations to deal with. So I would just say, think twice before you hire friends.
Yikes. Yes. It's good advice. Okay. Is there anything that you do differently?
Kind of similar, related to people and hiring. I think the biggest mistake that I've made, and I think a lot of startups make, is not hiring the best people you can as quickly as possible. You're not making those hires sooner. And it's, especially with a bootstrapper's mentality, you're trying to always find a deal. You're like, oh, this person's only 55 grand a year, but they're really good and we can put them in a few different situations. Or like, this person's 75, but this person's 60. You're like, okay, we could probably make the 60K work. But that incremental difference in the long run will mean nothing. And like, the difference between good people and great people is so wide, and the impact that they have, it really compounds, whether it's to the positive or to the negative. And the sooner you get great people in your company, the sooner you'll start to break out. And as a leader, you'll be able to step back from the day to day and start to do the really kind of essential work and the thinking and the strategizing that's important to kind of get to the next level. And I think for the first 2 years, I really felt that I was like a slave of the business to a degree. Like, I didn't think that I'd be able to get to a point where me or some of our partners wouldn't be the ones that have to do everything. But that really changed when we started to hire really great people and pay up and and be okay with it, and I would do that 100 times over. I would do it a lot sooner if I could.
Awesome. Love it. So, okay. So now where can everybody find you if they want to buy some swag or ask you questions?
I mean, me personally, I'm very open on social media. It's just at Michael Mortocci, Martocci. My email is in my Twitter bio. My DMs are open. If you find me on LinkedIn, you can message me. I love just talking to people about business in general. And then the company, it's just SwagUp pretty much everywhere on. We don't really post that much, but our team is really active on our email and on intercom on our site, just team@swagup.com. But yeah, it's pretty easy to find us.
Awesome. Thanks. And then quickly, if anyone is interested in checking out more about Zapier, we have a YouTube channel that shows all of our Zapier 101 videos, how-tos, and we also do a Zapier 101 webinar about once a month. But you can also go onto the site and go to roles where you can pick your actual role and figure out what kind of Zaps you can set up based on if you're in marketing or sales or whatever. And then if you have questions, you can go to zapier.com/help and type in your questions and get any support that you might need. And then there's Typeform here. Typeform, you can go to typeform.com. If you have questions, you can go to help.typeform.com, and then they are all over social and you can find them at Typeform. So go check them out. And next, we're just gonna jump right into questions. It looks like, Michael, we got a lot of questions here for you.
Right, I gotta drink water before we start.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, SwagUp team. First, I want to congratulate you for a great user experience. I ordered a sample box from you last week, and a few days later, I already received it across the globe. My question is, how many print shops are you working with, and how do you handle all the logistics?
You should ask Christina, our director of operations. So she might have a different answer, but I think that's really the hardest part of this entire business, and it's why it's so attractive and why there's so much opportunity is because the logistics and the operational component of it is so difficult. It's one thing to just build a site and say we do swag packs. It's another thing to actually be able to execute on it, especially as you scale. I mean, like I said, every day we have 20, 30, 40 orders coming through, for new orders for companies. And it's really difficult. And the suppliers, I mean, to be frank, are not the greatest. They're not tech savvy. So it's very difficult to tap into live inventory levels, be able to send them orders automatically in any sort of fashion like that. So figuring out the operations is really the key part of the business. And we deal with lots of different providers. We have, I would say, probably 8 different screen print and embroidery shops that we deal with on a weekly basis. We're trying to consolidate it down to preferred partners. We've even toyed around with the idea of doing it ourselves, but we really want to stay focused on our technology. But I mean, all in all, there's probably 150 different vendors, and companies are always wanting to do something that's different or out of the usual kind of selection, and that kind of creeps into how many suppliers you work with. But the operations is tough.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. And also, I just wanted to reiterate that we will be sending out the recording on Monday, so look out for that. And if you do have questions, put them in the Q&A box and we'll continue to monitor those. Okay, this is for you again, Michael. Did you ever consider Shopify over Wix? What made you choose Wix?
Yeah, I mean, I've built plenty of Shopify sites. I mean, so before SwagUp, when I was in college, we had a site called cheapcustomprinting.com. It's literally the worst name ever, but that's where I kind of got my start in custom printing. We were selling custom printed flags after learning a little bit about that in college, putting them up in dorm rooms, kind of like Barstool Sports style. And that was on Shopify. But the issue with Shopify is it's very, unless you're a developer, it's very constrained. It's very much, sell something on e-commerce. And what we do is very custom. It's not like, just this iPhone is a SKU and you just put it on a site and you sell it. Every project is custom branded for that user. And it's also not necessarily an experience where people are ready to buy up front. They want to submit their information and start a project, but it doesn't mean, you don't get a lot of people that just go on our site and like, okay, we're going to drop 20 grand and buy stuff. Like they want to go through a process and talk through it and design the items. So I just don't think Shopify is really set up for a business model like that. It could work for more of like an e-commerce style, like we just sell bulk water bottles, but for our model, it just didn't really make sense for us.
Okay, great. All right. Do you use an app for your pricing options or matrix on your pricing page on your website? And if so, which app do you use?
Mhm. No, I mean, a lot of what we do now is custom built. So, everything really lives within our ERP. It's kind of like our data warehouse, and that's what's reflected on the website. So, our CTO Dak is, first off, he's just a really, really smart guy. Not only does he understand software architecture and development, he really understands business too, and he can kind of see the playing field a few steps ahead and know where we're going to run into problems. And when we first started, but when we first started with Dak, brought him in as a CTO, we were looking into some ERPs like NetSuite, but they were too restrictive. They're too out of the box. You have to use it their way. Whereas Salesforce is not really historically thought of as an ERP, but it has the underlying foundation to where you can build around it and on top of it in a way that's really flexible. And for as a 2-for-1 kind of special, you can also use it as a CRM, and manage the sales process. So that was Dak's decision to build out our whole ERP there, and that's where our product catalog lives, all our supplier data, pricing information. And we have our own kind of formulas in terms of markups and what our cost is and shipping costs, and that's just what gets reflected on the dashboard in lifetime. When we were originally, the initial version though was just showing rough estimated prices on the site, and just saying, okay, this bottle is going to be around $8, because you're never going to have the perfect solution right out of the gate. You just have to figure out what's good enough for now to keep going, and then let's figure out the rest later.
Okay, great. This kind of relates in a tiny bit. Like, this question is, have you transitioned away from third-party tools to building these workflows in-house now that your business has grown? And if yes, at what point did you make the decision and investments to do so?
Yeah, I think you just have to look at, what is the ultimate product you're trying to build, and can you achieve this with existing tools? And then if not, then we have to do something else. So it's not like we made a black and white decision. We're going to stop using no-code tools and workflows. Like I said, we have over 50 active Zaps running and 154 different type forms. But we also know that there's some other things that it's just not possible to manage that way. Like, for example, we couldn't use Trello any longer as a system to manage orders. First off, there's just way too many. There's no history or account level data. If somebody wanted to reorder that product, you can't go into Trello as a database and be able to reorder that product. So we have to start setting the foundation. Like I said, about 18 months in, we brought in our CTO, and about 4 to 5 months in, we started to develop everything. So, I think, and I don't think you just stop using these tools in general either, because we still use them as testing grounds for new functionality. So that redeem page flow, like I said, we've been using it for a while and we still use it, but it's also informing us what we're going to develop when it becomes time to develop that. And we'll continue to do that. If we want to try out building something else within the dashboard, we're probably going to do it using these no-code tools first and play around with it and see how it goes. So it's a never-ending process, really.
Awesome. We got a request to see if you can stop sharing your screen so they can see you better.
Okay. Yeah.
We want to close up. Also, since I'm just going to give you a quick break because we got a question about Zapier here. Lori, are you on the line to do a live question?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. So we have 2 questions here. One is, how do apps connect to Zapier?
All right, well, that is Zapier. That is what we do. So we integrate with over 2,000 apps. You can see the list at zapier.com/apps. So what happens is each of those apps have created an integration on Zapier, which then each of those comes with a series of triggers and actions so that you can build into your Zap. So basically you create your Zap, you integrate the app that you want to use, you choose the right trigger and or action. And as the thing happens in that app on your end, it sends it to us, and then we move it along through the Zap and all of the apps that are connected to the Zap.
Awesome.
That makes sense. I feel like that was a little.
Oh, I thought it did. Well, here's another question for you too: is how does Zapier deal with API changes across all the connected apps and communicate that with customers so they're prepared for these changes?
All right, so that is something that we do spend an awful lot of time making sure that we are aware of. We have some of our integrations were built by our team, so our engineers built it, so they maintain it. So we keep an eye on our partners' APIs. If they're announcing that things are going to change, they usually give 6 months to a year, which gives us 6 months to a year to make sure that all of those changes are reflected in our integration. If the integration is built by the partner themselves, hopefully they would be aware of API changes on their own site and on their own app, so they would then make the changes to their integration. In terms of letting customers know, for the most part, it should be fairly seamless and you won't actually see any problems. There are cases where we've had apps do a total overhaul to their API, which ended up being an overhaul to their app. And so a lot of that will depend on sort of how we deal with it. If it's a massive update and we need everyone to move to a new version, we will send everyone emails. You'll also, if it's a less large one that we need to send to everyone, what you'll see is you'll be able to keep your original app with the original API, and your app integration in your Zap will just be flagged as legacy. Legacy apps are still available where they are, so your Zap will still work. We're not going to just automatically break it on you and switch you over without telling you. And then so legacy is an indication that at some point you probably will want to move to the new version, but do that at your own leisure when you can deal with it, as opposed to like immediate, everything's going to break if you don't.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we also have Rachel on the line from Typeform. If she can pop on in. Okay, we have a question here. What are the benefits of Typeform versus HubSpot forms if you're using HubSpot as your free CRM?
That's a great question. Thank you to whoever answered that. And thank you so much, Michael, for giving such a wonderful presentation. As Katie mentioned, it's such a fun story and I was so excited to hear it. And I want some swag as a result. So HubSpot is a great tool and great partner and friend of ours. With that said, we have an integration with HubSpot. So if you're a Typeform user and you want to pull any of the information that you're getting from your Typeforms into your HubSpot context, we can do all of that. HubSpot Forms is a great free tool. Typeform also has a free version. The thing about Typeform that three main things. So better engagement. Statistically, 72% more people are or Typeforms on average get 72% more response rates than traditional forms and surveys. And a lot of that has to do with our second value, which is just a better brand experience. So Typeform was built by 2 designers. And with that, art and design is a huge part of Typeform. So you can embed videos, GIFs, emojis, different colors. You can view our template gallery. And the third thing is just better data. And so being able to kind of see as the responses come in, and also you can have different logic jumps. So if you're capturing lead gen and you want to qualify certain leads, you can design a quiz with Typeform. You can use some of our advanced features like hidden fields to be able to pull in the name. So let's say, hey, Michael, thanks so much for signing up. Let's get your email. And it just makes it feel more personal. So as we say, every interaction counts. But I encourage you to check out typeform.com, sign up for a free account, and launch your first Typeform and see how it goes.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. I love Typeform, even though I need to learn how to make GIFs, put GIFs in it and make it pretty. Okay. Next question, Michael. Okay, we've gotten quite a bit of questions about your team. Let me just try to see if I can combine some of these. Okay, does everyone on the SwagUp team have a different expertise in relation to the platforms like Salesforce, Typeform, Zapier, or does everyone know how to use all platforms?
Yeah, I think it evolved. I mean, initially it was really, And I feel very strongly about that. Startup founders really have to be generalists. You know, it really requires, especially if you're going to be bootstrapped, you don't have the credibility to hire a bunch of great people. I think you need to be able to figure out how to do everything yourself first, especially if you're going to hire people to do it. How are you? It's going to be difficult for you to, be able to judge their performance or their ability to do something if you haven't done it yourself. So I really did a lot of the initial stuff. I built out the Wix site. I built out the Typeforms. I figured out Google Analytics. And I think that first off, that's the first step. But then after that point, you know, it was mostly, it was still really me. And that's not to say that's a good idea. Like, you don't want to be too reliant on one person, but I was really managing most of it. Now, as we've kind of introduced new tools like Salesforce and having some of our own native experiences, we have like a head of Salesforce development and backend engineering and front end engineering and UI UX designers who all kind of own their little piece of the platform in a way that we didn't have before. But it was really me managing it initially. But at the same time, it wasn't very dynamic. Like, we didn't have to change it all the time. We didn't have to go into, Wix and Typeform a lot to make edits. It was kind of like a set it and it was good for a while. So no, I think in general, you don't want to hire experts in the beginning either. You don't want people that are, oh, like this person's like a Trello expert or something like that. You need everybody to be well-versed in everything. And I think it was more of that kind of environment early on. I can't even remember at this point because I feel like 3 years ago was like 30 years ago and it was so different. But I think in general, at a startup, you'll do better with people that can learn how to do a little bit of everything.
Love it. And this question kind of goes along with that. What are some of the biggest needs in terms of the types of people you need to join your team for higher global scaling? Like, what do you find is the best way to find great people?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it comes down to finding those first great people that are going to be the leaders and then hiring underneath them and letting them use their networks and their experience at other companies to bring people in with them. I think it's hard to like fill out the bottom, not the bottom, but the core kind of infrastructure and then place a leader in top. I'm a much bigger proponent of finding great leaders and let them build their team underneath them and let them kind of use their history and track record and network to kind of bring more people in. So any of the best hires that we've had been those types of people. But at the same time, we've fared really well with AngelList as a platform to find new employees. I think as opposed to something like LinkedIn or Indeed or some of the other platforms, AngelList really attracts a certain type of person that wants to work at a startup and understands that kind of culture. So some of the best hires that we've had have been there. But in terms of like what we need, I think generally speaking, you can never have enough great salespeople. We've had a really small sales team up until this point, and now we've just brought in the director of sales and we're starting to hire under him. And I mean, I would take 10 more salespeople tomorrow if we found 10 great people. So if anyone's looking for a position, definitely reach out because we're always in the market to hire great people that want to work with customers. And then, the warehouse component of the business, the fulfillment side of it, it's kind of really difficult to hire for, especially with, unemployment benefits being so high. People don't really want to work right now, because there's no point. It's like you get to stay home and you can make more money than hourly work. So we've struggled finding great talent in the warehouse. And, we talked about one of those lessons, hire great people as soon as possible. I think in the warehouse, that was one of our biggest mistakes, was trying to find like a warehouse manager, director of operations that was like cheap. We went through 3 different people before we found the right person. It's just a big waste of time. So I think operations is difficult to hire for sure.
Okay, it looks like we are out of time. We did the whole hour. Woo! Thank you everyone for all of your questions. Thank you, Michael and Rachel and Lori. This was an awesome presentation. Great story. Love to hear it. Everyone can look out for the recording sent out on Monday. It'll be in your inbox. And I thank everyone for joining us on a Friday afternoon.